Today we are going to do the analysis of the poem Birches, which is prescribed in our BA final year syllabus. So, background of the poet. So, first of all, Robert Lee Frost was an American poet. His work was initially published in England before it was published in America. Known for his realistic depiction of rural life and his command of American colloquial speech, Frost frequently wrote about settings from rural life in New England in the early 20th century, using them to examine complex social and philosophical themes. Frost was honored frequently during his lifetime, receiving 4 Pulitzer Prizes for poetry. He became one of America's rare public literary figures, almost an artistic institution. He was awarded the Congressional Gold Medal in 1960 for his poetic works. On July 22, 1961, Frost was named Poet Laureate of Vermont. Theme of the Birches: Youth. Youth, like death, is a constant backdrop for many of Frost's poems. The speaker of Birches never sees a boy or comes across one. He only imagines one, and the boy that he does imagine is himself at a younger age. They are ready for adventures in nature and represent the wild, untamed state of man that remains good and moral, even though no one is there to govern him. Man and the natural world. In Birches, Frost incorporates ideas from 2 similar traditions. The first is the Romantic tradition. Poets like Wordsworth, Coleridge, and Keats often set their characters in nature. The character would embark on adventures or long walks. Sometimes nature would challenge him. Spirituality. Robert Frost is not the kind of poet to insert religious imagery into his poems. A subtle Christian allusion is rare. However, the poet writes a lot of meditations on life and death. In Birches, Frost mentions heaven twice. Notice how it is always with a lowercase h and is more suggestive of the sky than paradise. Isolation. As with much of Frost's poetry, Birches creates a mood of loneliness and isolation. Some factors that contribute to the mood include the winter weather, which seems to cut the speaker off from the other people, and the speaker's discussion of the boy growing up on an isolated farm. The speaker's loneliness may be the result of adult concerns and considerations. Summary: a man is walking through the woods. Looking at the top of the tree line, he sees some trees swaying in the wind and he starts to imagine things about the trees. He thinks about how the ice covering the trees cracks when they bend. Then he thinks about how heavy ice and snow will bend thin trees to the ground. Then gets him imagining a boy climbing to the top of the trees and bending them down until he can let go and fall safely to the ground. He remembers doing this when he was a kid and wishes that when he felt trapped in his adult life, he could climb trees. This memory makes him feel like life is not a trap because his youthful imagination can free him at any moment. Line 1 to 3. When I see birches bend to left and right across the lines of straighter, darker trees, I like to think some boy's been swinging them. To begin with, we notice that the speaker is speaking in the first person to an imaginary audience. Birches are trees with slender trunks and bark that peels off like paper. They can grow up to 50 feet tall. Because birches have thin trunks, they bend pretty easily in the wind and under the weight of snow. Also, some types of birches have white bark, so they stand out against straighter, darker trees. When the speaker sees the birch trees bent to the ground, he imagines that a young boy was swinging them. We can imagine that a birch would be bent a little after the swinging. Lines 4 to 7. But swinging doesn't bend them down to stay as ice storms do. Often you must have seen them loaded with ice a sunny winter morning after a rain. From these lines, we do that learn that whatever it is, swinging bends the trees down to the ground, but swinging doesn't bend the tree enough to cause permanent damage like an ice storm can. During an ice storm, the tree is covered with freezing rain. The rain coats the tree in a sheet of ice that is formed during a cold winter night. The speaker expects you to have experienced this firsthand, but you have. But if you haven't, we can assure you it is pretty cool to see the sun reflect off the ice.